graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves, take it to the top one time, non-stop.
No, I love it. You know, that's why we have PhD hard talk, is to make us think outside the box. And you know, when you were talking, I could see us going back to the Globe Theatre. To be or not to be, that is the question.
Yes. Well, and it's eventually we will, because that's just how society is. Somehow we ended up to where we are today, and wherever we are in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, we will have done things to get to where we are at that point. But it is just, how do we get to that restructured society? And I don't know what that looks like.
No, I think we have a very interesting journey ahead of us. You know, maybe we might not experience it. The next generation might do, but I think it's going to be quite complex but very exciting at the same time. Now, to move you on to the next set of questions, these ones have come in. So in terms of diversity, equity and inclusion then, and you know, the gender pay gap, we can see there's a lot of movement, feminist movement, to say, you know, everybody has to be paid the same essentially in the workplace. What are your thoughts on that? Because women are still coming up short when it comes to the cheddar, the bonuses, and them actually running businesses. Even now, we can count how many women are presidents or prime minister around the world. And when they go out, and they're dancing, people are like, oh, what's wrong with you? You know, you're on top of the table. Ooh. You know, as we've seen in the news. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I will just do a little side caveat here. Again, for anyone who is in their PhD program and stuff and you are applying, I will tell you that you will have to write a DEI statement. So this is a field to get to know and to work with your advisors on, because this is a very hot topic right now. Some companies are very much leaning into it, and in the US, some companies are actually doing the opposite and rolling back on DEI initiatives based on we'll just say modern events. But my ideas as far as as far as DEI is, I think that, how do I want to say this? I think that in terms of DEI, and again, you can look at me, I can come from a female perspective, but as far as, race and, so I don't necessarily need to be the loudest voice in the room. So again, it's like, if we talk, this is like my opinion and stuff. But as far as DEI, I think that we are making a lot of strides in defining what DEI is, because and you kind of brought this up as you were describing it, is like, well, you have a seat at the table. Okay, but what is that? Is it a powerful seat? Is it a token seat? Like, am I just here to be this, to be the DEI person? And like, is your and again, I don't know the answer to this for any organization or company listening. Like, is your DEI person, are they the only type, or are they the sole representation in your company of DEI? Like, be it in terms of gender, race, gender expression, or sexuality. Like, are you saying like, oh yeah, no, we have a gay person on the team, we have a Black person on the team, we have a Latin person on the team, we have X person, and it's just like, okay, do you have one? Do you have like, and is like what? And again, I'm not the person to answer this. We have all discussed like what my expertise in it is. This is not it, but I just think my idea is there are like organizations that are really truly like embodying DEI and what it means to truly be diverse, and knowing that equality and equity are not the same thing. Which is a very difficult conversation to have. And we are at a point in our society where a lot of people don't necessarily, it's not that they don't, I don't want to say don't want to have that conversation, but they don't like have the time to have that conversation, or have the mental or emotional space to have that conversation. And I think that is something that we're seeing globally, is when we use terms like diversity, equity, privilege, there's so many people going without that it is hard to see like any advantage that they may have, because you can't tell somebody who's, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to put food on the table, like, oh, you have X privilege. And it's like, I'm eating ramen, like, and so, as I said, I think that that there's companies and organizations really embodying and, you know, truly exemplifying like what can be done with DEI. There's some that are just like you were talking about, like one person like at the table, you know, and then, I mean, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I'm hoping it did.
No, I think it did, because you've brought up the painful points of diversity, equity, and inclusion, in the sense of equity is different, diversity is different. They're very complex words on their own, yet they've been put into one box and made the same, which they aren't. That's why we're having the problems that we're having in terms of current day. And which is important for people to understand, because that's where the anger comes in, where people are like, you know, pushing, for example, with Black Lives Matter. Me, I would say personally, every life matters. I wouldn't say Black Lives Matter, because every life matters. Going back to your point, paycheck to paycheck, poverty has no skin tone. Literally doesn't. It affects everybody, right? And you have to come out of poverty. And sometimes it's, you know, it's not your gender per se, it's just you struck luck. And then someone sees you and then says, well, you have, we'll say, just as an example, this is an example, white privilege, but you've just struck luck. And that's what it is. Or you have tokenism, but you've just struck luck. Someone just liked you because they saw something that was in you that they dealt with, or maybe they see their daughter in you or their son, for example. So I'm just speaking in general here to say, you know, what you said is actually valid and is relevant to everybody, because we all come from different backgrounds, and yet the workplace or the legislations, they're trying to put us in situations whereby we feel like we can't breathe, and that's where the anger comes in, is my opinion, in terms of that. So thank you very much for sharing. So there's one more thing as well that has been brought to my attention, which is the maternity policies for PhD students or DBA students, to say there is a lack of. I don't know if you've seen even tweets whereby people are a bit annoyed, essentially, because they realise there's no maternity policy, or from the funding body, essentially. What are your thoughts on that?
So this is definitely where we differ in the US versus UK, is I think that as far as like the graduate student union at my college that I attended would definitely pay attention to the idea of something like a maternity policy. But if you look at the US as a whole, we don't really have like a universal maternity policy. And I think that's, again, where like this is a conversation that is difficult for me to have, because I would love for there to be an established maternity policy for PhD students, but I would also love for there to be an established maternity policy for mothers as a whole in the United States. Like there is no, like we have the Family Medical Leave Act, where, and again, I'm not the expert on this. I feel like I'm saying that for a PhD hard talk, I'm saying the words, I am not an expert on that, but I just do want to clarify that like my knowledge on FMLA is minimal, but there are some things being put into place, but there's no like monetary guarantee. There's no, like that's also dependent on like if you work for a smaller company under, I don't know, we'll say X amount of people, the Family Medical Leave Act doesn't kick in. And so, I mean, I'm totally pro maternity leave and maternity policies for everybody. But I definitely think that is a conversation to have. And this goes back to the point that I was talking about earlier about it would be great if we could all live in that graduate student bubble. And the only thing that we had to do was go to graduate school or higher education and study and write and read. And I actually said this on another YouTube show that I did. It's like, for me, like graduate school is like the ultimate book club. Like, I'm like, wait, you're going to give me a book. I'm going to read it. And then I'm going to show up to class once a week and I'm going to talk about it. Like, that's so cool. It's nerdy. But for me, like, it was cool. But we want to be in this graduate student bubble, but we're not. We are, some of us are somebody's mother, somebody's father, somebody's daughter, son, spouse, friend. And we experience these policies that like, the idea of a graduate student, somebody probably, and again, I'm not saying that they were intentionally level, but they probably weren't like, why would a graduate student, because they're going to be 23 years, they're not going to be married. They're in graduate school. Like, and I mean, I said, I don't know the conversations that are being had in the UK. But I do know we had similar conversations like that when I was a graduate student about health insurance and about things like that. And it was just like the idea of, we do need to kind of merge these ideas more as more and more people are returning. A lot of people go back for MBAs, go back for master's degrees, especially because jobs these days are asking more of people. So we do need to realize that graduate students aren't just graduate students, and we do need things like parental leave. We need maternity policies. We need, if there's a, bereavement policies. If I would have went to my department, they would have worked out something individually, but do we have a bereavement policy? What is it? And I'm not saying like my school has one or does not have one. I didn't look into it myself, but looking at the person as a whole and not just as a graduate student.
No, thank you very much for sharing. The next question is to do with higher education, since you're globetrotting and all. Does higher education, in your opinion, grad school, the US term, does it break the poverty cycle, in your opinion, in terms of having a master's, a PhD? Do you think?
I think, as someone who was a high school, I was a high school teacher. I was a middle school teacher. I got my undergraduate. I would say education as a whole is the way out, and a lot of it is luck, and a lot of it is circumstances. And when I talk about like my own personal example, I graduated from a high school in a rural area. A lot of my classmates went to college. A lot of them did not. Like, a lot of them went straight to the workforce. But a lot of the families in the town that I come from are solid working class or lower class. And to me, like that's something that I would tell everybody is, I can't, again, and I hesitate to use the term like break the cycle, because there's so much more that goes into it. But education opens doors that may not otherwise be open to you. It might not be the answer, but it's definitely, it's a key to open several doors. And again, I'm 100% here for master's degrees, PhDs, but I'm also here for trade school and community. I'm a product of the community college system. Like any type of high school education and post high school education, as I said, whether it's trade school, doing an apprenticeship, just some form of education will help. And yeah, that's my opinion as a whole. Graduate school, awesome, great, 100% recommend. But I also, just for anybody listening, any kind of post, and I think y'all call it, we call it secondary school as well, and I think that's what y'all might refer to it as. Yeah, so any post-secondary. I tried them when I'm speaking. Thankfully, living in Germany helps, because I was like, okay, yeah. They're like, what is a senior? And I'm like, oh, I think that would be like year 12 for y'all.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because we also use the same terms for high school that we do for college. We have and year 9, year 10, year 11, year 12 is freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. But then when you go to college or university, it's again freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And a lot of people are like, why do you do it twice? Well, no, we just kept the name. I can't say, but for some reason we kept the name and moved it over. And college and university in some cases are very interchangeable terms, and that is not true. Here in Europe, like when I say, I do try to be cognizant of the fact when I do say college, I probably mean university. And like when I say community college, for us, that is the, I want to say the equivalent for y'all in the UK would be sixth form college. It's like that first 2 years after secondary. So.
Yeah, I love it.
And that's why we come to Ph.D. Hard Talk, is to learn the differences in higher education.
Do you know what? It's always good, because I get questions, for example, people contacting saying, I want to go and do my PhD in the US or to go to Canada, from the global south, and like any tips and guidance and stuff, because the language is different. It's just like how you've moved from academia to industry. The language is different. There's certain jargon that's used in academia that just, if you said it in industry, they're like, who do you think you are? Like,
I will never forget the first travel article I submitted. I put footnotes at the bottom of, and my editor was like, "We appreciate you citing your sources, but we don't do that here. We just kind of like link to I know how to frame it in a way, like, it's not that I don't cite people, but I don't. There's not footnotes at the bottom of our. We'll say like according to such and such, or we'll link to the source itself. But it's just they were just like, no, we don't do that.
No, I love it. And do you know what? It's really good, the fact that you're sharing, because there's some people probably who've gone back to industry and they're trying to come back, or who decided when they finished their undergrad to say we'll go to industry, and now they're looking at the way industry is. They want to impact policy writers, like you said, you want to change the world, and then you realize actually it's just I'm adding on to the body of knowledge. You've literally touched on everything and made sure that we understand at home. So no, we love it, we love it, we love it. And I think to your point in terms of higher education, I think it's quite complex, and it depends on you as a person, because here in the UK, well, I'll say England because it's different, Scotland and Wales. We can opt for a student loan. And what most people don't understand is that when you get a student loan, you have to pay back, and that comes with interest. So going back to my point whereby I said poverty has no color, because it doesn't matter if you're brown, Caucasian, or black or white. Everybody goes through that. And when you get your job, there is a cap to say when you earn a certain amount, then you start paying you back. But what happens is it has interest. So a lot of students who've gone into higher education over the past few years, I think their uni fees was 9,000, and then they get they get an allowance. And so they're actually walking away from their undergrad £50,000 in debt. And then if you want to get a mortgage, so now think about all of these things. Our mental health is not the way it should be, because you're actually accumulating debt. And for most people, then they'll apply for a scholarship for their master's or their PhD, but it's not everybody that gets that. Some people then decide to self-fund. So for people who are in this situation, they would say no. it doesn't open doors because we look at the finances. But then at the same time, we get to travel around the world and meet these amazing people, to which is an oversight because we just look at the financial side, because it has a huge impact on our decision making, be it family, getting a mortgage, you know, the normal things that a normal person.
And I will
would
say,
want to
like,
get.
I did both. I self-funded my master's degree, and then I received a fellowship for my PhD. And of course, there were like costs associated with my PhD, but I believe my fellowship was like 80% covered. And then I also had a job within the university that I like made money from. But I say this as somebody, like, when I didn't go straight from my undergraduate to my master's degree program. I took some time off. I was a teacher. I spent a whopping 3 months in car insurance. And when I, like, it was a family decision to go back and get my master's. Like, I was a conversation I had with my husband, like, do we have the finances to take on for me to go? Like, where are we in life? And so, like, do we have the ability to absorb the, because it was a loan. I took a loan to go to get, I had student loans from my undergraduate. So I'm like, okay, well, we got to like look at these loans, and now we're going to look at these. And when I talk about teaching 7th grade, that's what I did. Teaching 7th grade was my paycheck went completely towards paying off my student loans. And so, like, I definitely say, like, again, going back to almost my thesis at this point of this conversation is you're never just a graduate student, and like, it's going to be different for everybody. And that's, you know, when you talk about like, does it break the poverty cycle? No, you never, especially at least in terms of, for me, for like a humanities or a history master's degree, you do not go get your master's with the idea that you will, like, my job opportunities did not expand once I had a master's degree. That is just the bridge to the PhD. You get your master's so you can go and get your PhD. And I knew that. I knew getting my master's. Let me rephrase that. For like the first 6 months after my master's degree, I was like, I have a master's degree. Everybody will want to hire me. And I was humbled very, very quickly. No, I'm like, I definitely agree with you there that it is a conscious decision that you do have to make, because and again, I can't speak for every degree or every option in America. I can speak, again, primarily from the humanities perspective, the history perspective. Like, it is harder. Like, if you are just solely seeking a master's degree, you will probably not get that funding, and you will have to make that personal decision, or that decision with, you know, your partner or whomever, and your family as a whole. Like, is this something, you know, I can take on, we can take on? And is the, what would they say? Like, the juice worth the squeeze? And like, I mean, people call me doctor now, which is really cool. But I also, again, I spent a year teaching 7th grade to pay off my loans from my master's degree. And then now I believe it was last year, I finally, like, I completely, like, the student loans are completely paid off. I got like the little like congratulatory email. It was like, your loans are done. I was like, yay. So yeah, like, but again, I went to industry and got a job, and, you know, for me, I think it's worth it. But it is like, please do not apply to any master's or PhD program, to anybody listening, just off of Noma. Like, yes, you should totally do it. I mean, I'll tell anybody, yeah, sure, why not do it? But
yeah. No, I think it has to be a decision. And usually when I get such questions, I always say, you know, ask yourself some questions. Do I really need it? What is the relevance? Look at your finances and think about, if you're relocating, you have to adjust to a new culture. What does that look like? How long will it take for me to adjust? Because your mental health has to be catered. There's so many questions that you need to ask yourself as a human being before taking on people's advice, because it is self that's actually doing it. Essentially, to your point, to say we are discussing, but you have to make that decision by yourself. So the final question is, you came here before and you've come back again. Do you think PhD Hard Talk is beneficial in terms of us as researchers, the universities, and also businesses in terms of the topics that we discuss and the wider community at large? Or do you think, no, Noma, it's not working, call it a day, this is not it?
Well, I think just the fact that I came back should be answering of itself. I mean, I just like talking to you, so we could just check in with each other every once in a while. And we
Yeah,
keep saying that we're going to do that, and then 3 years later, here we
literally.
are. But I think that's where you stand out from other, brand. And you and I talked about this before. Like, you were like, I'm not here to be an influencer, like not necessarily here to be a brand, but for more or less of lack of another term, like for you as a brand, I think where you stand out is like, you don't just talk to humanities PhDs, you just don't talk to science PhDs. Like, you are really like working to just put any information that you can out there. Do you want to know about conferences? We're going to talk about conferences. Do you want to know what the perspective of a first-year student is? We're bringing on a first-year student. Do you want to talk to somebody who's been in the field for 10 years? We've got that too. And I think that is so intentional of you. And I just, because in different hands, this could just like have a complete lack of focus, and it could just like run wild, and it doesn't. Like, what you put out there has intent. And I remember the last time we spoke, you were like, well, here's kind of generally what we'll be talking about. We kind of just like let it go, and you came with some hard hitters, and I was like, oh, I thought we were just like shooting the breeze here, Noma. Okay, let's really and like just some of the things that we were talking about today, AI, DEI, like these are, yes, we're talking about the PhD, but we're talking about the world as it is, and the world that we live in, and the society that we live in. And these are the conversations that we should be having, not just between you and I as colleagues and associates, but as a society as a whole. And so keep doing it. Hopefully it is not another 3 years again before I get to talk to you. And I just, for anybody listening, like we did. And when I talked earlier about like, I didn't just, talk to Noma 3 years ago and then out of nowhere be like, oh, hey, let's catch up. Like, we have over the past 3 years been like, yes. Oh, hey, see, you're in England. Like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just missed you. Sorry. Like, and I remember I was in England. You were like, actually, I'm in Scotland. And I was like, oh, come on, I flew to England. And then I was like, hey, I'm in Scotland. And you're like, well, actually, I'm back in England. So like, I am serious when I do say, like, keep those contacts, because like we have kept in touch, and we keep in touch via LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and all those places. And it is amazing to see how PhD Hard Talk has grown, because you were still again, I know you're not like big on influencing a brand, but you were still like kind of building the brand. And what does PhD Hard Talk look like the last time we had spoken? Now you're like, this is what PhD Hard Talk is. Welcome to the talk. We're here to talk.
No, that is true. And, just to re-emphasize, it is relationships. And we wouldn't be talking now if I was such a mean person to you and made you feel so uncomfortable. And also, when I ask you questions, I reflect on my research as well. And I reflect on how I present my work at conferences. So I learn too. It's like reverse learning, if that makes sense, through my questions. And I go back to my research as well and be like, that is an interesting point, but it's not relevant. Take it out. So I learned so much from our discussions, and I even shared it in my progression review, actually. To say I've learned so much.
I do have one compassion, and it's one of these things that like, it's not just you as an English person, but like when I talk to English people as a whole, because like on my resume it says I am a subject matter expert in British imperialism and modern European history, but I've also learned British history and through an American student lens, and through the like resources available. Like I'm sure through primary and secondary school, y'all are given like so much more contextual background, and like just I kind of think of it as a way as like how you all learn, you know, American history is probably like how I learned British history. And, you know, yes, I do have a PhD in this, but I'm like, oh, you like, she's going to ask me something about something that I don't know. And I'm just going to have to be like, I don't live there. And I really don't know the answer to that. But I hope to live there one day. I do have job applications in England. I just need someone to sponsor me.
Do you know what I was going to say? But those are the blind spots that we all miss. You know, like whereby you know you're an expert, but are we really experts? Or is it subjective? Because those are the blind spots that we miss. Even me with my research, there's certain things that actually I know I wouldn't know because I'm not every woman. Genuinely not.
And I think as like something like when someone's like, oh, as a woman, how do you feel? And I'm like, again, it's like, I'm not every woman. I can tell you as the woman that I am, but like I am my own person with a lived experience. Yes, there is I know I almost have to say, yes, there's probably a universal, you know, female experience. But again, like when we talk about things like the female, like in terms of like the female vote, like, oh yeah, we're going after like the women's vote. Like, what does that mean? Like, yes, there's certain topics that women probably have a stronger opinion on, but there's other topics that are probably a lot more universal that like, you know, women are probably going to have a varying, you know, opinion on, and you can't necessarily say like the race vote, the gender vote, the, you know, class vote. Like some things are just universal and we need to go as the human vote.
And that ties in nicely with my point, which I said poverty has no skin tone. So gender as well, and all of these things that people are trying to build. It's just, why are we doing it? And how should we do it? Maybe we need to change the way we think. I think in the last talk that I had with Professor Stephen, we were talking about racism, and he said something along the lines of racism is learnt, and that we need to unlearn racism.
Yeah, that is, I have been reading, so if you look at my Goodreads or my Storygraph account, it is so divided. I'm either reading like fairy smut, young adult vampire novels, or every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I gotta like throw a smart book in here. So people think I read something other than fairy books and vampire books.
Yeah.
Like that is literally how I've read like 2 books this past month, because I was like, vampire book, fairy smut. I was like, okay, we gotta throw. So no, that's definitely like like I'll say academic, not necessarily like the smart books, but like of the academic or the monographs that I'm reading, like that is something that's very much being touched on, is the discussions of race, is the discussions of you know, feminism, and I think we kind of touched on this the last time we spoke too, is the idea of how like the idea of feminism across different races, classes, and things like that, because, you know, not every feminist movement is, you know, looking for higher pay, is looking to break the glass ceiling, is looking for birth control bills. Some of it is like, it's a feminist movement to like end the food deserts in impoverished areas, because we can't get to breaking glass ceilings if there's no grocery store in the town.
Yeah.
And like, and kind of, we keep trying to like say goodbye, and then we just keep. This happened last time too, y'all. We just hit the stop record button.
No, I mean, you know, just to round off, everything that you said is important. That's why I said diversity and equity and inclusion needs a moment of silence, and then we start again. Because like you said, if there's no education system for women, because men are the ones who should be educated, women are fighting against that because they want to be educated, they want to be able to read because they can't read, essentially. So it's different for everybody, and there's no one size fits all. But I'd like to say thank you again for your time today, and it's been really, really insightful, and hopefully we'll have a part 3. You won't stay away for a long time, but thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. And again, hopefully like not another 3 years. And it has been fantastic talking to you again.